What's up, everybody? Thrall's Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic, and I am back with a collection update. Kicking off the new year with, God, what is this, 120? I think it's 120. I don't know, I do a lot of these. I'm pretty sure it's 120, though. Anyway, got a sizable batch here, got some stuff from Rotted Life, as well as Relapse Records, and I'm also going to go over all the cool stuff that Rick over at the Dreadful Minutes gave me, including that one that he trolled me with. That'll be fun. And I'm already gearing up for another one after that because this is generally the time of year where I go over all the stuff that I missed and like stuff that I didn't get a chance to jam, and I jam it, and then sometimes I end up buying it. And for any of you guys that watch any of the live streams I do with Rick and Jeff, I got some gift cards to Amazon, and I fucking went through and ordered a bunch of shit all in one night. So yeah, all this stuff is arriving soon, so plenty more to come. So anyway, we got a lot of stuff to go over, so let's get into it. Basilisk Emergence. This is the first full length from this Philly-based death metal act. Came out in 2019, and this is an interesting version because I was looking it up on Discogs, and this is the minted version. It's like 1 of 50, and I think it's because it contains some bonus tracks at the end, but I'll get into those later. But this is some really crazy, kind of like technical death thrash slash death metal. Like, it kind of walks a fine line between there. Like, it's definitely very comparable to bands like Atheist, Hemotoxin, and even a band like Zoth. And actually a couple of moments in here I thought I heard like Shadows Fall style riffs. So there's a lot of like thrashiness, but there's a lot of cool technical play on here. Like, this is a really awesome album. I really dug this one, especially since all the songs are vastly different from one another. These guys kind of like to jump around in styles, but they have a cool sort of uniform sound to them. Like, it doesn't sound like they're trying to find like a different sound, like in terms of like testing the waters or anything like that, in terms of finding out where their identity is. There is a clear sound across here that is, again, more like technical death thrash, but you also have moments where it gets like a little bit sludgy or pushes more towards straightforward thrash metal or death metal. The vocals on here are a little bit more mid-range, and I think that kind of works as like a universal delivery on here. Like, there's not a lot of deep guttural vocals on here. And the lead work and riff work on here is absolutely fucking solid. This actually features one of the members of Bloodspore, which I'm actually familiar with too, and I think this is a really awesome like death metal slash death doom band. But this is very different from that. Like, you have moments of like kind of black metal that pops up, little bits of punk on here. The song Sad State of the Art goes full on D-beat punk riffs. Like, it kind of forgoes some metal and just kind of goes for like the hardcore sound. But what I really dug was the last track, or at least the last track listed on here, Karma and Friends. That is a giant riff fest of a song with some really cool dynamic transitions, especially towards the end. There's like a really cool percussive build-up, really great like kind of classic heavy metal harmonies, and then the end of it goes like full-bore classic Black Sabbath. Now, the bonus tracks in here, I think there are 9 of them listed. Most of them are silence. Towards the end of Karma and Friends, it kind of goes like kind of naturey, like it sounds like they're walking in the park. There's like some noise in the background, and I don't know what sounds like people talking, like maybe like radio chatter or something like that. But it's this weird soundscape that kind of carries over through these 9 tracks, which are very short up until you get to the end, which I think is called Good Feeling, which turns into this really awesome instrumental. There's a lot more atmospheric lead work on that one. It's like a little bit different. I really dug it. Actually, I really dug pretty much everything on here, minus the long build-up with the extra tracks to this last track. Overall, this was absolutely fantastic. I fucking dig the shit out of this. I definitely want to hear more by this band. I like this kind of techie death thrash sound, and I like the fact that they made the songs really stand apart from one another. Strongly recommend this one. Again, if you're a fan of bands like Atheist, Hemotoxin, Zoth, and just like really riffy kind of death thrash, definitely check this out. Michael Bolton, Time, Love, and Tenderness. I'm not into all 3 of those things. Actually, make it 4, because I'm not into Michael Bolton. Obligatory background information. This is the 7th album, came out in 1991. I tried. I actually did try to sit down and listen to this, and was like, dude, I can't. Like, this is this is the equivalent of like date night at fucking Olive Garden. Like, this is just so fucking basic, like AM radio fucking love songs. It's pretty much the audio equivalent of missionary sex and maybe like 4 minutes of it. Yes, Michael Bolton is a pretty good singer, I'll give him that, and he does kind of make fun of himself. He chopped off the fucking mullet, thus meaning I guess he submitted to Billy Ray Cyrus as being the most outlandish mullet of the 90s. But yeah, I tried. I really did. I think I put more effort into this than I rightfully should have, just because I'm probably never going to listen to this again unless I'm trapped in an elevator, dentist office, or, I don't know, some really fucking boring ass fucking club that has this on a jukebox, and for some odd reason someone keeps going to the fucking jukebox with quarters. I did flat out skip over When a Man Loves a Woman. Like, I mean, I'm surprised I actually made it that far because that's track 6 on here, but yeah, no one needs to hear that again. Like, fucking ever. Anyway, Rick, thank you for making Michael Bolton appear twice on my channel now. And yeah, I'm never going to listen to this again. I didn't finish it the first time anyway. Like, I can't. It's just bad. Anyway, check it out, maybe. I don't know. I'm not gonna judge. You don't even have to tell anyone you check this out. Like, you can keep this as a dirty fucking secret, which in hindsight sounds like a much better idea than putting it on my channel. But yeah, it's Michael Bolton, and there it goes. Lucifer's Children, Signs of Saturn. This is the second full length from this Paraguay-based doom metal act. Honestly, this might be the first metal act I think I've heard of from Paraguay. Anyway, this is very classic doom, like very much latched on to the sounds of, like, you know, St. Vitus, Black Sabbath. I would say this is very Sabbathy. Female fronted, and I like her very sultry delivery, but I think sometimes she kind of overdoes it. It might be the accent, but it kind of comes off as kind of like trying to ham it up a little bit too much rather than just singing it. But overall, she's pretty solid. And the riffs on here, again, latch on to like all things like early Sabbath, like Master of Reality, Volume 4, just solid fucking riffs. Most of this is very slow plotting, especially the song My Bloodlust to the Moon, that is just flat out doomy, slow, murky sounding. But when you get down to the title track, you get a little bit of like additional kind of heavy metal flair to it. Like the harmonies sound a little bit more, I don't know if upbeat's the right word because it's still slow and doomy, but there's a little bit more like just melody to it that isn't necessarily soul-crushing doom. I will say the last 2 tracks on here, Goat of Mendes and The One Who Hears the Time's Voice, it's an interesting title, are a little bit more sinister. Like, they're a little bit more dark sounding. Like, the rest of this feels, you know, again, very classic doom, but these feel just, I don't know, like more brooding and dark. And I will say Goat of Mendes gets considerably heavier. Like, there's a big stomping rhythm and the riffs are a little bit chuggier. I think the lead tone on here is a little squawky. It's a little too raw at times. But overall, I really dug this. This is pretty solid. I would definitely check out their debut. I'm kind of curious what it sounds like. Again, there were a couple of things in here I didn't necessarily get into, like namely the very raw lead tone and the fact that the singer kind of overdoes it. Like, she's a good singer. You can hear that very clearly. It's just, I think she kind of hams it up for the performance a little bit too much, and it kind of hurts the album a little bit. But overall, it's just solid doom metal, and if you like your doom metal sounding a little bit more classic, like, you know, again, I would throw in Trouble as well in there, as well as like St. Vitus, Black Sabbath, definitely check this out. Queensrÿche, Operation Mindcrime, the 3rd album from this Washington-based prog metal, heavy metal legends. Been meaning to get this for a while. This is what Rick initially told me he was sending me, and then of course, Rick being Rick, sent me a whole bunch of other killer stuff, and Michael Bolton. This is one I've been meaning to pick up for a while. I mean, I've jammed it on YouTube, and I just never fucking picked it up, and finally I have it, and this album's amazing. Like, this is like almost the perfect balance between, like, I'd say like 80s Rush and Judas Priest. It has all the heavy metal licks, so many great fucking riffs, but the proggy flair to their songwriting really just kind of opens it up, especially when it comes down to like conceptual stuff, because this is a concept album about a drug-addicted teen that turns into a assassin, like kind of Manchurian Candidate plus whatever drugs he's on. Now, I'd only listened to like individual tracks. I never actually sat down and listened to the whole thing, and I love how this album flows. It really does well with the skits and themes. There's like transitional atmosphere between the songs, and the songs are catchy as hell. The title track, Speak, The Mission, I think is absolutely fantastic, and of course, Eyes of a Stranger, which was a really big single for him. It's just excellent fucking songwriting. Like the lead work, all of it. Like, the dynamics in here are fantastic, and I would say, like, this is probably Geoff Tate's best vocal performance. Like, he's absolutely killing it. His vocal range on here is absolutely insane. And I like how they can switch back and forth between the giant conceptual songs that are definitely more lavish and more progressive, like Sweet Sister Mary, which is fantastic, but the next track, The Needle Lies, is a little bit more towards like classic Iron Maiden. Like, honestly, it reminded me a lot of stuff you would hear on Somewhere in Time, which I fucking love that album. And there's even some stuff that kind of caught me off guard, like the bridge on Spreading the Disease almost kind of sounds like KMFDM, like there's a little bit of an electronic or sort of industrial vibe to it, but it all works well. In fact, like, this entire album is fucking fantastic. I mean, I kind of knew it would be. But yeah, Queensrÿche has been a band that I've been meaning to get into more, like go back, check out, because I know their impact on like classic heavy metal and prog metal is pretty substantial, especially when it comes down to their earlier works. But when it comes down to the fans of this band, this one always comes up as probably their best work, so this was the one that I wanted to get, and honestly, I plan on getting more. I really fucking dig this. This is an absolute classic. I probably don't need to tell any of you that. I mean, it's been around for a fucking while now. But yeah, if you have never jammed this and you've been just kind of on the fence about this band, kind of like I have, definitely check this out. It's fucking amazing. And thank you again, Rick, because this is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, check it out. Rotheads, Slither in Slime. This is the first full length from this Romanian death thrash act. At least that's what it said on the archives. I definitely got something different, like more old school death metal. It does have some thrashier moments, but overall, like, this definitely has more of just a straight up old school death metal sound. Like, it's very raw. I would say possibly too raw in some respects, because I think the bass on here is just unbelievably loud. Like, at times I feel like it kind of drowns out the guitars. Like, for some odd reason, they push the bass way up in the mix on here. And for death thrash, this has very cavernous vocals. Like, it's very much along the lines of like Incantation, very reverb drenched, very gloomy, and, you know, like not really very intelligible, but they do contribute well to their very dingy and very brutal at times sound on here. This is a pretty fucking nasty listen. And it's very straightforward and meat potatoes. Like, this definitely has all the hallmarks of like Incantation, but it's definitely not as technical. This is like Jungle Rot sort of switching gears and playing like their version of an Incantation style cavernous death metal. And that definitely comes through in a lot of the thrashier aspects on here, like Gut Mauled. Jungle Rot definitely has a more thrashy style of death metal in terms of their old school sound, and Gut Mauled feels very similar to that, except with, like, again, more cavernous, raw production. Now, that song and Gore Coffin also have, like, some interesting atmospheric bits. On Gut Mauled, there is, like, this weird chatter during a big breakdown section. It sounds like, you know, just, like, a whole bunch of different voices layered to create something very creepy, but it also sounds like, you know, like channel chasing. I don't know. It's a very interesting bit of atmosphere. And on Gore Coffin, there's a really cool melodic break, like a very clean section in there that kind of shows off their more melodic side. Even the song Skin Force has some distinctly more melodic tremolos on here. Now, the last track on here, Dragged Through Existence, I really enjoyed it. It's the longest track on here. I think it's like close to 15 minutes long. And I think it's well done, but it feels like two songs kind of sandwiched together. Like, there's definitely some overlap in terms of repeating parts, but it kind of feels like two different songs they kind of put together in here. But overall, this was really good. Like, first exposure to the band, came out of Memento Mori. Generally, I trust that label in terms of finding just filthy underground death metal. But I definitely dig this. Again, like seeing it labeled as death thrash and then listening to it and not really hearing a tremendous amount of thrash, or at least enough to really justify calling it death thrash, kind of like caught me off guard. But overall, solid old school death metal with just fucking killer album art. So yeah, definitely check this out if you're a fan of like Jungle Rot, Incantation, Obituary, Autopsy. Like, it's definitely in that vein. It's just gross and old school, and yeah, check it out, it's good. Terrordome, We'll Show You Bosch, Mitch. This is a compilation from a Polish brutal crossover act. I had never heard of this band before, and I was initially kind of confused because I believe their first full length is actually called the same thing, but this is actually a compilation of a bunch of stuff from EPs and live sets. And I mean, this has 28 tracks, and I think initially I thought it was going to be grindcore, but looking at it in terms of the song titles, I was like, yeah, you know, this is definitely more along the lines of crossover. And yeah, the album cover is interesting. I didn't even notice the dude in the back of the pickup truck, and I probably should have, because there's all sorts of stuff going on back there. But honestly, it's the back cover that I think is really interesting, because you have people freaking out because there's a dude that is like trying to behead someone with a table saw, you know, like, oh my God, that's kind of fucked up to see on a beach. But then there's just people sitting down like, I don't even fucking care. Like, I'm on vacation, no one's fucking this up, you know, someone's calling the cops, dude in white's calling the cops, this will be fine, just, you know, let me get some sun. But yeah, this includes, let's see, I looked them up, what was it, their EP from 2007 called Shit, Fuck, Kill. That's an interesting order for things. A split they did with another band that I forgot to look up. I believe they were a metalcore band, but it was called Spit It Out. And another EP that came out in 2012 called Bestial Castigation. And again, this is my first impression on this band, and it's pretty wild. Like, in terms of the style, I guess you could definitely call it brutal crossover. Like, it has all the hallmarks of crossover. The songs are very short. They're definitely more along the lines of like humor and violence, and just, it's very dark and kind of stupid, but kind of fun. But they throw in more brutal, like riffy moments and blast beats. So there are sections where it switches from the sort of crossover sneer of the vocals to more like deep growls, and you hear like more death metal riffs sort of peppered in. And it does kind of make it its own thing. I mean, you know, like blast beats do pop up in crossover, but in terms of the brutality of the riffs, it does make it a little bit different. And there's some really sick breakdowns, especially on Madcap, Terror, and Pathological. And those are some of the more tame song titles on here, because yeah, there's some real fucking weird ones on here. I think I brought up a couple. Dickhead Stronger, I'm not entirely sure what that one's about, but it's a song title. Boiling Dog's Blood, Fuck Body. Yeah, there's some fun ones on here. There's even a song on here called Pinche Pendejos, and I know for a fact that's not Polish. But yeah, the second EP I think sounds better. The first EP is very raw, like, you know, the production on it is, there's definitely a lot to be desired in terms of like just mixing it, but the second EP sounds a lot better. But it's the live tracks at the end, I think that, man, it just sounds like someone recorded them on their phone, like right next to the fucking PA, and they're just super muddy and kind of hard to distinguish. But overall, I kind of like this band's style. Like, I like the brutal aspects. Honestly, I think I could use like a few more breakdowns and a few more grooves. Like, I know that's kind of like, you know, not crossovers thing. Like, it's generally fast and angry all the time. But that really showcases the more brutal edge of the band a little bit more. And it added something different to the formula and kind of made it stand out. But yeah, this is really fucking interesting. And again, I don't think I've ever heard brutal crossover before up until now, and not too bad. So yeah, check this out. It's pretty fucking wild. Trog of Vomit Reborn. This is the second EP from this New Jersey death metal act. A lot of killer death metal coming out of New Jersey here lately. Usually it's Toxic Waste and Spray Tan people, but I'm all for fucking killer death metal coming out of the state. This was kind of a blind buy. I saw the album cover, I saw the album title, and I think I did jam one track, so yeah, kind of semi-blind buy. But I dig this. This is flat out old school death metal, very like late 80s and early 90s sounding. Like, we have horror synths on here, which are done really fucking well in the intro and the interlude. Honestly, those are ones I wouldn't skip, and generally I bitch about intros and interludes, but they both complement the album well. But their songwriting on here is excellent. Lots of nods to Incantation, Immolation, Morbid Angel, like very much in that style. The riff work is awesome. Great, like, just nasty sounding death metal vocals all over it. They kind of sound like Steve Tucker, honestly, a bit. And he's kind of got that raspy sort of just, you know, booming fucking growl, and I fucking dig it. But honestly, it's the riff work that really got me. Horrific Irrational Dream Imagery, which that's kind of a wild title. Love the riff work. Like, you have a solid brutal sound, but there's enough melody peppered in to keep it interesting. And the atmosphere is really cool too. They throw in some nasty breakdowns. It's just solid fucking death metal. The song Cosmic Parasite actually has some more clean, like, lead melodies on top. Very much like a straightforward Death Doom song, or at least a good chunk of it is. Kind of reminded me a bit of R.A.M.B.O, just in terms of their style of very gothic and, you know, creepy death doom, where it has those clean melodies. Not saying it has the same sort of like leads on it, because those leads are just fucking legendary. But again, that very similar sort of atmosphere where you feel like there's a thick fog hanging over the speakers, or I don't know, the studio where they're jamming it, or the venue. It seems like it would totally fit either way. The last track was possibly my favorite one, which is the title track. There's a really cool off-time rhythm to it, and this one breaks out like the classic death-sounding harmonies, like, you know, circa Leprosy or Spiritual Healing. Love the fucking songwriting in here. This is a killer EP, is what I'm getting at. Pretty much, I think it only runs like maybe 22 minutes, but all of it is absolutely killer, and that includes the intro and the interlude, which, again, generally I bitch about that, but it complements the songs really well. I definitely need to hunt down their first EP. If it's anything like this, I'm probably gonna love it, but yeah, if you love just old school death metal done with like some killer atmosphere and cool horror synths and shit like that, definitely check this out. This is fucking badass. Full of Hell, Weeping Choir. This is the 4th album from this Maryland/Pennsylvania-based grindcore/power violence act. Been meaning to get more of their stuff. I've been a fan of them for a little while now. I think when I heard Trumpeting Ecstasy, I was like, yeah, I fucking dig this. And so far, that's still kind of the benchmark in terms of the stuff I've listened to by them, but this was another really good one. Holy shit, is this band explosive. Like, every song on here just seems to detonate right in your face like a fucking claymore. Every song seems like it is just chock full of contempt for everything, including the listener. The songs are wild, frantic, pivoting back and forth between like hardcore, grindcore, even death metal. Like, there are some nasty death metal riffs on Thundering Hammers, Silmaril or Silmaril, however you say that, and Cellar of Doors, the last track, which is just fucking disgusting. A lot of this I would say is very comparable to like Wormrot, Pig Destroyer, or even like Converge, except like it's Converge from the upside down. So it's like an alternate, even more visceral version of the band. Because there's a lot of hardcore nods in here, and honestly the drum work really reminds me a lot of Ben Kohler's style of drum work, which that dude is absolutely fucking amazing. And when it comes down to atmosphere, there are things that I absolutely love, and there are things that I absolutely can't stand. What I love is, again, the transitional atmosphere and adding stuff on here that enhances the listen, like makes it even creepier, like Armory of Obsidian Glass. There is legit what I would say is a weeping choir in the background. So way to tie in the title, but it's those sort of like haunting, you know, fluttering moans and singing, like kind of like the score of like 2001: A Space Odyssey with the choirs in the background. It's just very haunting, and it adds to this very bleak, dismal, ugly song. But then you have songs like Rainbow Coil and Angels Gather Here, which are just kind of pure noise. Like Rainbow Coil is like a whole bunch of like drum takes that are looped, and it's just noisy. And Angels Gather Here is, again, like another pure noise track where it's just grating. Like, I can't get into pure noise. Like, there has to be some sort of hook on here to really kind of draw me in. So those were kind of skippable for me, but the rest of this I thought was absolutely fantastic. As chaotic and fucking violent as this is, they still managed to generate some really clever hooks on here. And while they are buried in the fucking just mountain of hate that is contained on this album, they're still there, and they're still just fucking excellent. So yeah, if you've never checked out Full of Hell, I don't know where to start with this band, honestly. Like, Trumpeting Ecstasy is probably the one I go to the most, but I really did dig this one too, and the last one I thought was pretty fucking wild too. But yeah, just check them out, and get ready for like some seriously violent, twisted music if you've never heard this band before. Either way, be adventurous. Check it out. It's fucking insane. Chasmdweller, Flesh Crusade. This is the second full-length from this Toronto-based two-man death doom act. I feel like I'm a little bit late to this band. It wasn't until Classy Lonnie sent me a copy of their Fossilized album that I really started to actually jam their stuff. Like, I've seen it around, I just didn't pick it up. So now I'm definitely a fan, and this band does, like, I guess it's death doom, but it's very brutal death doom. Like, it's like Mortician doing death doom, and that definitely has a lot to do with like the drums being programmed. Though I think they found a much better program on here than they did on Fossilized. That drum kit, I don't know, it was definitely kind of rough sounding in terms of the program. This sounds a little bit more natural, but this is so dominated by just thick, chunky, kind of slow riffs, but you still get blast beats in here a fair amount, and the vocals in here are just exceptionally brutal. Like, low, very gurgly, It's almost like, you know, Frank Mullen fronting a Death Doom act, which, man, I kind of want to hear that now. Actually, I mean, I would even say this is comparable to bands like Fulci and Fluids. Again, like the Doom aspect, it definitely shows up. Like you do have some big Death Doom moments, but I think there's a lot more slams on here actually. Like there's some big slammy fucking breakdowns all over here. And this is just all about like just groove and fucking riffs. Like Hex Beyond Mortality, that song is just catchier than hell. And again, just stacked with just like head-banging grooves all over it. Now, I will say some of the transitions on here can be a little bit knee-jerk. Like sometimes it feels like it transitions out of nowhere. But the mix on here is so caustic and thick, like sometimes you actually just kind of miss it because they're just constantly fucking pummeling you. But I have to say the last track, Death Colossus, which is like 21 minutes, it kind of smooths out the transitions a bit. It does feel like a longer version of literally everything on this album, but if you already liked everything on this album, that's really not much of a problem. There's a breakdown that comes in at about the 8-minute mark of that song that is absolutely crushing, but there is a kind of long period of like noisy build up to the last section that kind of took me out, but the last section on here was damn good. Like honestly, I think it had one of the best hooks in the entire album. This is flat out brutal as hell. Again, if you're a fan of bands like Fulci, Fluids, Mortician, and then like a bit of Death Doom in there, just groove-laden brutality, definitely check this out. It's just insanely heavy, and there's a good chance I'll probably get more of this because I think this is pretty damn good. So yeah, check it out. Purtenance, Avulsion, 1991 demo. This is a 2022 reissue of, well, Purtenance's original demo back when they were known as Purtenance Avulsion. They would actually change their name after this, but anyway, this is a Finnish death metal act. I got into them with their debut, and I really dug their overall sound. I love a lot of Finnish death metal, no fucking surprise there. But this debut is a little bit different. Honestly, I think it sounds a little bit like a bridge between Swedish death metal and Finnish death metal. You have a tone on here that is definitely closer to an HM2 tone, but you also have the very swampy, inhuman vocals that are very low. Like a lot of this reminds me of early Convulse, or not quite Demolich just in terms of the vocals, but kind of close. Musically, probably more similar to Convulse than anything else, but I dig it. Like the songwriting here is really good. The production, of course, is raw. It's a 1991 demo that came out on a tape, and the only thing they had out before this was technically just a rehearsal, but I think they released it as a demo as well. But the songs in here are awesome. Inside the Crematory is just excellent, loaded with killer riffs. I do think the church bells on that sound a little bit cheesy, but it's just kind of the way they were recorded. Cannibal Souls, the last track, has kind of that classic Finnish Death Doom sound coming out, but again with this really filthy sounding guitar tone that it just kind of sizzles and crunches a lot like an HM2 tone. I mean, honestly, I kind of knew I was going to like this. I already like their debut. Like, their discography is a little spotty for me, but there's a lot of good stuff in it. But I think it's most of the debut that I really latch onto personally. This is just short and fucking ugly as hell. It's pretty much the audio equivalent of Hoggle from Labyrinth. And yeah, I dig it. So yeah, if you have never checked this out before, I strongly recommend it. I strongly recommend Purtenance's debut as well. It's really fucking good. But yeah, this is pretty nasty, so check it out. Ritual Mass, It Ever Turns. This is a compilation of, I believe, all of the released material by this Pennsylvania death metal act, and it's all really good. And I think they kind of mix it so it all kind of sounds the same. Like there's not a lot of variety in terms of like the mixing style on this, so I kind of like that because it gives it more of a album feel. So this is very old school death metal. In fact, it has a little bit of like leftover thrash to it, so it kind of embodies the style of like earlier death metal, and you know, like it still had like a little bit of like Possessed and Slayer to it, so kind of like Leprosy a little bit. There's some Autopsy style D beats, like it has a little bit of a punky edge occasionally. The vocals are very cavernous howls, and they're very throaty and raw, and maybe a little bit one note. Like occasionally you'll get like a lower growl or a higher scream, but most of the time it kind of hangs on to this uniform delivery. And it's serviceable, but at the same time, when you hear him do some different stuff on there, I kind of feel like, you know, there could be like a little bit more vocal dynamic on here. The riff work on here is really solid. It definitely takes from like, you know, a lot of different styles of death metal. Like you have some more like sinister evil sounds that are kind of more akin to like incantation, but you get some flat out brutal chugging that's on here as well. And I do really like the more Death Doom shifts that are on the title track and Temple of Desecration. Sorry, it's really kind of hard to see these because they chose like the darkest red to put on top of black. So yeah, it's a little hard to see. Even the song Relief on here has like a more brutal death metal edge too. So there's definitely a lot of different death metal, but overall it has that just kind of thrashy old school sound that I really dig. Now, like looking at the archives and looking at the track listing on here, it has a slightly different track listing. So I might be getting the wrong song titles on here in terms of what I'm hearing, but I did jam this entire thing and I think it's fucking awesome. I'm definitely interested in hearing more by this band for sure. Like this is just nasty death metal and pretty much everyone that watches this channel knows I love fucking nasty death metal. So yeah, definitely check this one out. This is pretty gnarly. And again, I like the fact that this flows like an album rather than a comp. Like this doesn't feel like it's selected tracks, you know, picked from different eras. Like this sounds like a fucking album. So yeah, check it out. Fucking good shit. Rotten Tomb, Visions of a Dismal Fate. This is the first album from this Chilean death metal act. I pretty much picked it up when I saw it was South American death metal. Like I kind of wanted to get some of that fast, crazy, you know, just kind of unhinged shit that they do so well. And I was a little surprised by this. While it does open up very fast and thrashy, like very similar to Possessed, early Sepultura, Sarcophago, this takes a hard turn to like doomy territory and more groove-laden stuff. Like generally when I see South American death metal, the first band I think of is Crusade, and they are fucking blast beat champions. But this has a lot of groove, a lot of atmosphere, and just a vibe that is, I don't know, just kind of completely different from what I was expecting, and I fucking dug it. Like this has a lot of elements of bands like Incantation, Immolation, I would even say like Mortiferum every now and then too. And when it does get faster and more blast beat oriented, it kind of feels more like Floridian death metal overall, which of course I have no issue with whatsoever. The riffs on here are exceptionally catchy, and I have to say the lead work on here is really good. All the leads complement the evil sort of dark vibe on here so well, especially on the song Denial, Desolation, Resignation. The leads really set up this really cool evil atmosphere on the song, which is already fucking, you know, just nasty and heavy, like very dark and sinister. And the song Emptiness is pretty much just straight up like Immolation worship. Like it has the weird angular riffs. It's again very sinister and dark sounding. I like this a lot. Like I was expecting one thing and I got something completely different, but that is in no way a complaint against this at all. In fact, I kind of like that this kind of steps outside of the tropes of, you know, most South American death metal. And again, I love that style. I love that crazy blast beat driven, very unhinged shit. But hearing this band sort of like dial it back in favor of more dynamics and songwriting, yeah, this is excellent. Even the production is a little bit cleaner than I was expecting. Like it's got a very solid, heavy, very crunchy guitar. The drums are well pronounced. Like it's just mixed really well. And it retains some of the raw aspects of South American death metal in general. But yeah, if you've never checked this out, much like I hadn't, strongly recommend this. This, again, kind of steps outside of the tropes of a lot of South American death metal, but man, it does it really fucking well. So yeah, check it out. Front to back, awesome album. R.A.M.B.O, Defy, Extinction. This is the third full-length from this Philly-based hardcore slash thrash slash crust. Actually looking them up, it's pretty interesting because this band is a band of straight-edge anarchist vegan cyclists as well as a band. Like legit, like that was like in the second sentence on their wiki. That's all the stuff that they really identify with. And this is, I would say, just kind of straight up hardcore. Like it kind of reminds me again of like Victory Record stuff, like the kind of stuff that I got into as a teen. I saw this coming out on Relapse. I distinctly remember this album cover because it's absolutely fucking awesome. It seems like something that Ed Repka would do, but not nearly as well. Like I think all the mascots would be too out front in his artwork, but that's just my main gripe about Ed Repka's artwork. This is just a fucking fantastic album cover. But this is my first time ever hearing this band. And actually one of the first times I think I've ever heard of this band. I think they have, again, 2 other albums, but I'd never heard of them before. And it's pretty solid. Like, the songs are very short. The vocals are almost all gang vocals. Like, it seems like the single vocal tracks even kind of sound like there's a gang vocal behind them. So they might not have like a legit one person singing all the time. Like, it might be an all gang vocal affair, which is pretty cool because gang vocals are awesome in hardcore. This is pretty much loaded with D beats, fucking punky moshers, solid hardcore riffs. I do think the songs do tend to be like too short. Like, they kind of feel like they end a little bit too soon. Like, some of them aren't even a minute long. And while, you know, I like short songs like that, but in terms of them actually feeling complete, like, it feels like there could have been like more closure to the song itself. I was kind of thrown off by the fact that there are some slower, more atmospheric tracks. Like, the opening track, River of Birds, does open up more melodic before it gets into the D beats and the hardcore shouts and all that. But Imperialist Pigs in Space, which is a great fucking song title, and Blizzard Brigade, both are more ambient. Like, there's more like atmosphere to them. They're a little bit slower. They still have like a hardcore vibe, but again, it's, I don't know, like, just kind of different. Like, you weren't expecting spacey atmosphere on here. You're expecting like beat downs left and right, which that is most of this. Loads of socio-political themes, which I'm sure if you're looking at the album cover, like, oh yeah, no, that's pretty fucking transparent. But there's a fair amount of dark humor in here, especially the last track, YouTube Disasters, which was like, wow, man, they have obviously seen the channel. But it's actually about like people dismissing peer-reviewed evidence and going with confirmation bias, which unfortunately is the thing that goes on in this country a lot. There's a good chunk of this country that doesn't want their beliefs compromised, even in the face of evidence that completely annihilates their beliefs. Believe me, I've run into them a lot. And believe me, I've probably pissed off some of those people too. I just don't gravitate towards beliefs as much as I do reasoned logic and physical evidence. Like, that's just me. But anyway, this is pretty solid. Like, it's kind of no frills, fucking hardcore. It's in your face. Like, you know, like kind of the things you expect from hardcore. Again, though, I feel like a lot of the songs, like, I feel like they're kind of cut off short. And that did kind of hamper the listen for me. I do want to check out their other 2 albums, though, because, I mean, at its core, it's really fucking solid. So yeah, definitely plan on getting more. And yeah, if you like just no bones about it, fucking hardcore with like kind of a thrashy edge, definitely check this out. It's a fucking gnarly listen. Sewer Fiend, Echoes from the Cistern EP. This is the first EP from this UK 2-man death doom act. This actually features bassist John Riley from Cryptic Shift and Slime Lord in here. And I mean, it's 2-man in the sense that they have a guitarist and a bassist, the principal songwriters, but they did have a session drummer on here. But this is some really gross, just murky death doom. In fact, it sounds like it was recorded in a sewer because it's very cavernous, very ugly, very dingy. But it kind of goes along the same lines as bands like R.A.M.B.O and Dream Unending, with the use of really clever, clean melodies on top of the bottom-heavy, droning chugs that are on here. And while this EP definitely drones on and does it really well, there's some really good riffy moments on here that are definitely reminiscent of, like, Temple of Void, too. I thought this was really solid, especially the title track, the last one, I think is absolutely fantastic. The only thing I would say kind of hampers it is, I think the clean melodies, while they're good, they're not implemented as well as they are in like a band like Dream Unending or R.A.M.B. Honestly, like, it just feels like they're just like random dissonant melodies that they don't necessarily accent the big bottom heavy riffs behind it very well. Their strength on here is definitely just these nasty fucking chugs. And honestly, the more I listen to it, I kind of thought that maybe like horror synths would really work on here more than the clean tones. I don't know, that's just like my take on it. But overall, like, this is a 3-song EP that is just chock full of sewer-drenched fucking murk, and it's pretty fucking awesome. The production's solid, the atmosphere is dingy and fucking gross as hell. I dig it. This is really fucking good. So yeah, if you like bands like, again, R.A.M.B, Dream Unending, but you also like stuff like early Hooded Menace too, definitely in that sort of vein in terms of their sound. So yeah, definitely check it out. Thorn, Yawning Depths. This is the second album from this 1-man Phoenix-based death doom act. The one man behind this is Brennan Westmeyer of Fluids, and that band is absolutely disgusting. And this is his more Death Doom project, though I think there's definitely some crossover in terms of the style. It's definitely more brutal Death Doom, and it definitely has its more like chuggy moments. Like it does have like, you know, bits of dripping atmosphere and sort of creepiness and the slower, more Death Doom sound on it. But there's a lot of chuggy, brutal riffs that you would definitely hear on a Fluids album as well. Actually, it kind of reminded me a lot of Chasmdweller in this stack too. Like it's very similar to that, maybe less blast beats, but it's definitely kind of in that same vein, and production-wise, kind of similar too, though I think this whole thing sounds kind of muffled. Like they wrapped all the mics in like beach towels or something like that to give it like a very just, you know, raw, but, you know, kind of, again, muffled sound. I don't know why they would do that. I don't know. It sounds just maybe a little too quiet for something that is supposed to be this brutal. And I have to say this album art is wild. Like, I don't even know what's going on here. There's a lot of faces, even inside the mouth too. Like maybe like this is the gaping hole in a Lovecraftian sex doll, or, well, probably something much different than that, actually. I'm just weird and I like to make inappropriate jokes. That's probably what I'm getting at here. Now, I do think the atmosphere in here does separate it a little bit from sounding just like Fluids. Like, thankfully, there are no samples of people actually dying on this. That's always an issue I have with Fluids. But there are some issues I have, like, namely, the songs are very short. Like, generally, Death Doom, you think longer songs, like more long droning sections. And honestly, you don't get that until Lapis Lazuli and Graven Moonglow. Like they start getting a little bit more drony and a little bit more doomy. Like a lot of this has a lot of palm muted chugs, and again, something you would associate more with like brutal death metal a little bit, albeit played at a more groovy pace rather than blast beats all the time. Now, I like this first album, Crawling Depths. I thought that was really good. I thought it was kind of cool that it was Death Doom, but it was very breakdown heavy. This one feels maybe like a little bit rushed. Like I feel like some of these songs could have developed a little bit more. And again, the production here being so muffled kind of hampers it. But I mean, overall, I think the music is really solid. It's just, I think it needs a little bit more space to grow on here. And again, like different production. But this is pretty good. I dig it. I mean, I still would probably gravitate more towards Fluids, even though, again, all their samples are just unbelievably fucked up, but man, the fucking music's good. But yeah, this is also really good. It's just kind of different. But yeah, check it out. For my own opinions, I think it's good. It just needs some work, but that's just me. So yeah, check it out. Savage Master, Myth, Magic, and Steel. This is the third album from this Louisville, Kentucky-based retro heavy metal act. I had heard of this band for a while and just like kind of a lot of buzz. A female-fronted, you know, old school retro heavy metal act. I'm a sucker for fucking retro heavy metal. I love, you know, those big old school harmonies that you hear in like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and more obscure bands that shouldn't be obscure, like Satan, because Satan's fucking awesome. But I've been meaning to check out this band for a while, and I kind of got like some mixed opinions on this one. Musically, I think they latch on to that old school sound really well. Like there's a lot of good riffs, lots of good like lead harmonies. That's always kind of a thing I look for in retro heavy metal. But the vocals on here are, I don't know, a little off-putting, but occasionally good. It's just a very inconsistent performance on here. I feel like this was all kind of done in one take, and they wanted to kind of capture a whole live performance vibe on here, but at the same time, there's some misfires on here vocally that just stand out. Their frontwoman, Stacey Savage, at times sounds absolutely great. Like she has a powerful voice, and as this is produced with the vocals right out in front, you're not gonna miss it. But at the same time, it's very atonal, and she does not hit every note like perfectly. In fact, there's a lot of sour notes on here, and it kind of made me scratch my head. I was like, why wouldn't they want to do like some different takes where they get a vocal melody that matches up with the really good melodies and the music itself? And the music does kind of go outside of heavy metal every now and then. Like there's definitely some more speed metal on here and more thrashy sections, but the vocals were the thing that I just could not lose focus on, because again, like there are sections on here where she's absolutely killing it, and then for some reason like the chorus just hits this weird sort of note fluctuation. I'm like, man, dude, if this was maybe done again, I think they would have absolutely nailed this chorus. And choruses, especially in heavy metal, like that's where everything's supposed to soar extra fucking higher and shit. And I occasionally feel like some of the choruses have a bit of an issue with launching itself because, again, you gotta have the vocal hooks to match up with the melodies. And that is more than apparent when you get to a song like Lady of Steel, which actually features 2 guest vocalists on there. And they're both really fucking good. And they're singing in key with the melodies. And she just sounds out of place. Now, I haven't listened to anything else by this band, so it might just be this album. But from what I was looking up, like, this is kind of a common complaint about this band. Again, I love the music. I think it's well done. It definitely pays homage to classic heavy metal, but it doesn't feel like a tribute. This feels like an actual band, but man, dude, again, the vocal performance, I think it's just a matter of just like getting better vocal takes in the studio because, again, it's so inconsistent because you can hear that she can sing in certain sections, and then there's just ones where, like, she just didn't match up with the melody at all. Like, I like stuff that is very loose. Like, you know, in the studio, like, yeah, people are gonna make mistakes. You know, it's cool to sound human. It doesn't have to all be like Pro Tool to death where it's like spot on. But there's a difference between sounding loose versus sloppy, and I think this comes off as a little bit sloppy rather than loose. And I think with the very dry production too, and the lack of like really any effects on her vocals at all, the fact that they're very dry, really kind of, you know, leaves her exposed in this mix entirely too, especially since they're really out front too. But musically, I think this band's good. I would check out more by them, but this one has me a little bit apprehensive, but still, check it out, form your own opinions. You know, this might be your thing. This might be your favorite heavy metal act. I don't know. I don't even know who I'm talking to right now, but, you know, it could very well be your favorite heavy metal act. I don't know. The point is, I urge you to form your own opinions. Don't just trust me, but this was not for me. But again, I might give this band a second chance in the future, so I don't know. But either way, check it out. All right, we have a pair here from Armored Saints. We have their 5th album, came out in 2000, called Revelation, and their 7th album came out in 2015, called Win Hands Down. And I've been getting more into Armored Saint here lately, mostly because I'm a giant fan of John Bush. I think he's one of the best fucking singers in metal and rock. His gruff delivery is absolutely awesome. It's very powerful, but he's also very tuneful, and I'll pretty much listen to anything that John Bush fronts, and that even includes some of the more questionable stuff in Anthrax. But I've been meaning to round out my collection of Armored Saint. I have most of the early stuff. I really fucking enjoy that. But their later stuff was stuff that I just hadn't checked out before, outside of maybe hearing a track on a compilation. And yeah, it's a little bit different, but I still dig it. Revelation, this was their big comeback after being broken up for a while. I think they broke up after Symbol of Salvation, which John Bush joined Anthrax not too long after that. But man, this is awesome. Like, this might be one of their heaviest albums, and I kind of thought that Raising Fear was, but I think that one's heavy in a different sense. Like, that still has a lot of the classic heavy metal sound. This is more like groove metal. Like, there's a little bit more like Southern Sludge, like kind of Pantera slash, you know, Crowbar sort of mixed in, but you still get some really good classic heavy metal riffs, especially in the song Creepy Feelings, which honestly might have been the first song I ever heard by Armored Saint. I mean, outside of whatever song they're playing in Hellraiser 3. I think I heard Creepy Feelings on a Metal Blade comp, but that song has like a little bit more of that classic heavy metal flair, but a lot of this is just heavy, kind of dark, but man, these guys can write some hooks. The opening track, Pay Dirt, is absolutely fantastic. After Me, The Flood, I absolutely love that one. Deep Rooted Anger, What's Your Pleasure, like this whole album is awesome. And again, a little bit heavier than kind of what I'm used to, because I've been starting kind of at the beginning of the band, and that's definitely more along the lines of like, you know, Judas Priest and early Iron Maiden. This has a bit of that groove metal sound to it, and it actually really works in here. Like, they have just killer songs. They know how to write amazing hooks. And Joey Vera. Joey Vera's fucking bass work on both of these is fantastic. That dude is just insanely talented. But yeah, dig the hell out of this. And I also dig the hell out of this, but not as much as this one. Like, this one was the one that really caught me here. This is just another fucking killer album by them. Again, it kind of has like a little bit more of that groove metal sound, but I think a little bit more of the classic heavy metal started resurfacing on here. Big difference in production. This definitely has a more raw, crunchy sound, especially the guitars in here. This one, way more polished, but it still sounds really good. And honestly, I think John Bush sounds even better on this one than he does on this one. Like this one, I think he was trying to go for a way more gruff sound overall, and it really works. It's awesome. But here, he's doing a lot more like clean singing, and it sounds just fucking fantastic. Now, I will say that this album is a little bit longer, and some of the longer songs on here aren't quite as good, like namely Muscle Memory, which feels like it just sort of repeats sections way too much in here. And granted, they're pretty good, but the fact that it's so long is like, okay, I feel like this just could have been edited down. In an Instant is a bit better at it. I think that is the longest song on here, but the song builds a lot better and it doesn't get like really repetitious. But overall, I think both of these are fucking awesome. Like so far, in terms of all the Armored Saint that I've picked up, I haven't heard anything that I flat out don't like, which is something that will keep me picking up their albums, which honestly, I think I'm only missing maybe 2 of them now at this point. But yeah, both of these are excellent, kind of for different reasons. Kind of like, there's definitely some overlap in terms of things that I like about this band in general that are present on both in here, but I like how heavy and more raw this is. Like, this is kind of a standout in terms of the stuff I've listened to from them. But again, this is also really good too, albeit maybe a little bit long, but just get yourself some Armored Saint, because honestly, they're a killer band. I think they're really underrated. And John Bush, again, one of the best vocalists, I think, out there in terms of metal and rock. So yeah, check out some Armored Saint. It's good stuff. All right, we have a split here between Blood and Nunslaughter. And I was pretty stoked to pick this up because I love both of these bands. I think they're both absolutely awesome. The Nunslaughter side I thought was really good. It kind of does sound like extra songs from their last album, Red as the Color of Ripping Death, which is a fucking awesome listen. I think the songs are notably a little bit more groovy for Nunslaughter on this one. Like, they're not sort of the thrashy, blasty songs that you're kind of used to from Nunslaughter overall. There's definitely a lot more groove, like definitely more along the lines of Obituary in some sections. But I mean, it's Nunslaughter. They do kind of just their thing, and it's pretty solid. But I think they got kind of outdone by Blood on this one, because Blood, I don't know, they kind of just went for something slightly different on here. The opening track on theirs, which is track 4 in here, Imperator, it kind of sounds like Celtic Frost. In fact, the guitar tone on here kind of has that, Tom Gabriel sizzle to it. And it's a little bit slower, a little bit more brooding before they go into just flat out insane grindcore. I think Blood is a really underrated band. I had the pleasure of seeing them at MDF in 2019, and they absolutely fucking crushed. I became a fan right there. And I like that this shows off, a little bit more depth in their sound. While it opens up like a Celtic Frost album, it kicks down the fucking door with the next track, Parasite, like old school Napalm Death. And the last track in here, Sadist, is a absolute fucking beast. There's a lot of good fucking thrash metal riffs on it, and it's just very energetic. And that was kind of the thing I could tell between the two sides, is Nunslaughter didn't sound as energetic as they usually do, albeit still sounded good. I fucking love Nunslaughter, but Blood just fucking came out swinging, and their entire side is just flat out amazing. And it kind of flows better. Like, it flows like it could have been its own EP, actually. But again, I dig this. I mean, the album art is kind of crazy. You got one-armed Satan there, and oh, no, he's got his dick out. Yeah, probably gonna have to find a way to cover that up, just because, yeah, I don't want to show Satan's dick, and it looks like it's attached very oddly. I don't know. It's weird, it's blasphemous, it's Nunslaughter, and oh yeah, even the little Satan creature in the back here has his dick out too. All right, everyone's got their dicks out. Fuck it, it's a party, and Nunslaughter and Blood are invited, and this is a pretty solid split. So yeah, if you like just gross fucking grindcore and thrashy evil death metal, definitely check out this split. It's fucking great. And finally, we have more Nunslaughter. This is Devil's Congeries Volume 4. This is a 3 CD, 1 DVD set of Well, pretty much the only way to collect Nunslaughter releases, because Nunslaughter has more fucking releases than I have cells in my body. These guys are the kings of splits and 7 inches, and this is how I choose to collect them, because you can get them all in this nice little package and you don't have to collect a whole bunch of fucking splits. But yeah, the first disc on here is just fucking loaded with stuff they've done with splits, you know, live material, just, you know, them doing them well. Like Nunslaughter does, again, one thing and they do it so fucking well, and I love it. And on this first disc alone, you have 31 tracks of them doing all this amazing shit. And I mean, it's a lot to fucking process, but I enjoyed the entire listen. There are some dips in quality in terms of production from split to split, but overall, it's about the music for me, and I just love Nunslaughter. Now, the second disc on here is actually a live performance they did in Japan, or at least most of it is. Now, the fourth disc on here is actually the live performance on DVD. I haven't had a chance to watch that because I've been down here listening to a fuck ton of music, but eventually I'm going to get around to it. And then the third disc is Nasty Novel Nugget, which it sounds like a bunch of demos or outtakes, different songs. I don't know, like, I just pick these up because this is the only way to collect Nunslaughter. Otherwise, you're just not going to have space in your record collection for Nunslaughter, because, well, Nunslaughter will just fucking take it over. I'm pretty sure they got like 40 more splits that are coming out this year. So, yeah, find yourself some of these compilations. I have now 3 of them. I don't think I have the first one, so I'm gonna have to hunt that one down eventually. But yeah, if you just want a fuck ton of Nunslaughter, and since they're not known for putting out full lengths very often, just snag yourself one of these. It's pretty much all awesome because it's all Nunslaughter, and yeah, I fucking love this band. So yeah, check it out. All right, that knocks out a pretty good sized collection update. Again, I already have a whole bunch of stuff stacked for a collection update. And now that I got another States of Metal thing out, figure out which one I'm going to do next. Also listening to a lot of Crowbar, because we're going to try to get that one out a little bit quicker. We'll see how that goes, because we do get busy with stuff. But also we will have a bunch of retro reviews coming out, because we decided, since January is a little bit slower of a month, we're going to pump out some retro reviews, because we've been meaning to cover that, but we got busy with a lot of new releases last year. So yeah, plenty of stuff coming. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there is a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our shop is there if you'd like to get one of our shirts. We do need to reload on them. But also within that is a link to our Patreon. So if you want to help us out there, just click the link. Denver Death Fest, I'm pretty sure by now there has been an announcement of some kind. And well, yeah, we kind of ran into a bit of a bind there. Something completely out of our control, unfortunately. But when we know more and we're able to tell you more, we definitely will. Because, I mean, we really want to do this, and we really want to, like, showcase a lot of fucking cool talent and a lot of the bands that we've had the pleasure of reviewing and talking to. So if everything goes well, this is shaping up to be a really cool thing. And again, we will keep you posted in terms of any updates on that, but just stay tuned. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. Another year in the books. We're going to try to make 2023 just as cool as 2022, or it may be better. I don't know. Like, shoot for better, but if it's just as cool as 2022, which I thought was, yeah, it was pretty decent. I mean, 2021 wasn't that good, and 2020, we don't even fucking talk about. But 2023 has some potential. So we're going to keep growing the channel, and thank you all so much for, you know, all the love you've given us over the years and continue to give us. I'm so glad you guys haven't found better taste in terms of YouTube channels. So thank you for that especially. But no, seriously, you all fucking rule. You all keep us going. And yeah, we're gonna just keep pumping out content full of all sorts of cool metal goodies. So thank you once again, and we will catch you later.